All right, welcome back to Focal Point AFR Talk. Going to talk about Detroit here in a second. Take more of your phone calls, 888-589-8840. Great move by the Prime Minister in the United Kingdom, David Cameron. He's announced that they're going to have a policy in the UK where the default position on computers is going to be to block pornography. In other words, every internet provider will have a default block on pornography, and if parents want pornography to come into their homes through their home computer, they're going to have to unblock it. And all of this is designed particularly to protect children from the harmful influences of pornography. Mr. Cameron said family-friendly filters would be automatically selected for all new customers by the end of the year. They can choose to switch them off, but the default position will be to block pornography. Millions of existing computer users would be contacted by their internet providers and told they must decide whether to use or not use family-friendly filters to restrict adult material. The filters would apply to all devices linked to the affected home Wi-Fi network and across the public Wi-Fi network wherever children are likely to be present. So that'd mean a Starbucks and a public library and all that thing. And customers who do not click on either option will have filters activated by default. So you will have to make an intentional choice to allow pornography to come in to your home. And the UK's biggest internet service providers have agreed to the filter scheme, meaning it should cover 95% of homes. Now, the point here, quite simply, is it is possible to block pornography. It's not inevitable that just because there's internet out there, that pornography has to be streamed into every home. It can be blocked. The technology is there to block. It's just a matter of will. And as I've mentioned before, the First Amendment provides no protection for pornography. The First Amendment is given to us by the Founding Fathers, zero protection for pornography, because the First Amendment was designed to protect political speech. Founding Fathers weren't trying to protect pornography or profanity or obscenity or vulgarity. When they had the free speech plank, it was to protect speech. And by the way, taking your clothes off, having sex in front of a camera, that is not speech. There is zero, nada, zilch protection under the First Amendment for profanity, or pornography, First Amendment as given to us by the Founding Fathers. Now, let's talk a little bit about Detroit before we go back to the phones. I'm going to play two sound bites. Ed Schultz, clip 6, Rob, and Melissa HarrisPerry, clip 7. And it's just amazing the mind warp that's gone on here. You know, one of the truths about propaganda, I spent the weekend reading a book on propaganda by a great French writer by the name of Jacques Ellul. And, you know, he makes the point with propaganda is it's impossible to reason with these people, the people that are distributors of this propaganda, because their minds have been so distorted by the lies that they have believed that they actually think that what they are telling you is the truth. They are so self-deceived that they believe they're telling you the truth, and therefore they cannot be reasoned with. No matter how out of phase their thinking is with the truth, with reality, you can't get to them. You can't reason with them because everything for them is driven by emotion and by this completely skewed view of the way the world works. So here's Ed Schultz basically saying, you know, Detroit's been run by liberals for 60 years. I mean, what you're looking at with Detroit, it's a wasteland. It is a barren wasteland. It is desolate. It's a sinkhole. 78,000 homes are unoccupied. A third of the city is just a dump. And they're taking bulldozers in there and knocking houses down by the truckload just to get rid of the debris. I mean, it's an absolute wasteland. It's a perfect picture of what happens when liberals run a place for 60 years. And now you've got people like Ed Schultz, Melissa HarrisPerry saying, no, this is all the fault of conservatives. It's just bizarre. This is Ed Schultz. Let's listen.
Detroit, Michigan used to be really a symbol of industrial strength and manufacturing in this country. But thanks to a lot of Republican policies, the city is now filing for bankruptcy. Now, it's the largest public sector bankruptcy in U.S. history. And the consequences could be devastating if you care about people. The already small force of police, firefighters, and EMTs are in danger of future layoffs. That's only going to make it worse. Roughly 30,000 retired workers are concerned about their pensions, you know, things that they're counting on. Make no mistake, Detroit is going bankrupt is exactly what the Republicans want. They outsource manufacturing jobs, attack unions, cut public services, and this is the result. Now they can wipe the slate clean because now they can start privatizing city assets.
You know, and Ed Schultz, he contradicted himself from one sentence to the next. He said that thanks to a lot of Republican policies, the city is now filing for bankruptcy. Then the very next sentence, it's the largest public sector bankruptcy in U.S. history. Now, he's deliberately avoiding the word unions because the public sector is unions. The reason that Detroit is going bankrupt is because of public sector unions. That is a liberal policy. Public sector unions, that's a liberal idea. It's a liberal policy. And the way these cities, and that's why you're going to have one city after another. Now, it's going to be a cascading effect, one city after another filing for bankruptcy. Chicago's probably going to be next. You're going to have San Diego. You're going to have San Jose. You're going to start having entire states file for bankruptcy because of unions. The one-word explanation for the failure of the city of Detroit is unions, public sector unions. So you have these union heads of these public, and even FDR, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, Mr. Liberal himself, said, look, you cannot unionize government workers. It cannot be done because what you have when they sit down to negotiate contracts then is you have these unions and they are not negotiating with the people that actually pay their salaries. You know, if you got a union in a private, in a manufacturing industry, then when the union leaders sit down with the heads of the company, they are negotiating with the people that actually have to write the checks. So they have interest of investors and shareholders and the viability of the company. They've got to protect that. So when they do the negotiations, there's a limit that you can't push them beyond because they know it will drive their company into bankruptcy and then nobody will have jobs. But with public sector unions, it's different. You got the heads of the unions, and who are they sitting down with? They are not sitting down with the people that actually have to cough up the money to pay their salaries. They're sitting down at the table with lawmakers who have the power to increase taxes from people who have no idea these negotiations are going on, reach their hands into their wallets and then pay these union people. So they're not negotiating with the people that actually have to pay their salaries. They're negotiating with people that can rip other people off to pay their salaries. And that's why FDR said, look, it can't work. No possible way you can unionize government workers because of this whole negotiation process. So Ed Schultz, that's not a Republican policy. I mean, even FDR, that was too liberal even for FDR. So these are liberal policies. Melissa HarrisPerry, and this is just big government on steroids, these government unions, all of these promises they make for retirement, for pensions, for health care, and they make these lavish promises. And they did it at a time when they would actually have to pay off on those things way down in the future, way off in the distance, so we can make these promises. We're not generating enough return on investment to be able to pay them when the bill comes due, but we don't have to worry about that because that's 10 years down the road, that's 20 years down the road, that's 30 years down the road. That'll be somebody else's problem. Well, now the payday has come due. Now it's payday, and they don't have the money. And so the people that are stuck trying to figure out how to deal with this are not the people that actually awarded them these huge monster contracts. So it's big government run amok. Here's Melissa HarrisPerry saying exactly the opposite.
We can talk about the micro story of Detroit, but it seems to me that Detroit, as always, is standing in for all kinds of things about America. Right. And in the case of Detroit, the reason that the tax base becomes so small is because of a loss of population, right? So folks move out, they're not there to pay the taxes on the homes, and the kind of deterioration is what you see in the numbers you suggested. But this lack of tax base is also exactly the thing that many Republicans would impose on us, even when our cities have sufficient populations, even when our communities have sufficient populations. This is what it looks like when government is small enough to drown in your bathtub, and it is not a pretty picture.
So for Melissa HarrisPerry, the problem is government is just too small. We need to have big government. Well, it's big government that created this catastrophe in the first place. By the way, you can get a lot of homes in Detroit for $500. There are places where you can get a home for $1. Why aren't people buying homes and moving there? Because the property tax rate is off the charts. What Detroit kept doing is they just kept hiking up the property tax rate, thinking that, well, we can just increase the tax rate. People will just keep coughing it up, and that's how we'll get out of this hole. Well, when the property tax rate is 3, 4, 5, 6, 8 times what people are paying in places like California, people just leave. They say, I got choices. I don't have to live in Detroit and pay these outrageous property taxes, so I'm going to leave. So people can't even sell a home for $500 for one reason: the property tax rate is out of control. People would wind up paying in 3 years. They would wind up paying in 3 years the entire cost of a home, a regular home. The property taxes were so high, like a $50,000 home would have like a $4,000 a year property tax on it. And so you'd wind up paying in several years what you spent to buy the home in the first place. Well, let's go to the phones before we go back to Detroit. Let's go to Enoch in L.A., or Louisiana, rather. Enoch, welcome to Focal Point. What's on your mind?
Yes, Brian. This is the first time I'm calling, and I've been listening to you for the last 2 years.
Well, thank you.
Yes, Brian. I wanted to tell you that I fully agree with the way you bring the truth. I'm black, I'm a Democrat, but I find your ideas genuinely based in the truth and in the Bible. And I wish that we can all understand that the truth is true no matter where it comes from, and we can stop having this division of race. Because when we base our racism in just outside ideas, we're just lowering our standards. Sometimes I find it offensive even when a white person lowers the standard or a black person lowers the standard. According to me, we are supposed to say that's a low standard and we should not accept it. And in that fall, we are supposed to bring Jesus in our hearts, as you say, and have good parenting. And that may be the only key that can not only solve our racism problem, but it can actually fix the problem that we have in the United States, Brian. Thank you so much.
All right, Enoch. Well, listen, thank you very much. That's very kind of you. Thank you for listening. So here's somebody, a self-described Democrat, kind of left-leaning in political orientation, but enjoys listening to this program because finds the ideas in accordance with the truth and is challenged by that. And maybe there'll be a full-fledged conversion to a conservative ideology in Enoch's heart at one point. Well, thank you, Enoch. Thank you for listening, and really appreciate your call today. We'll come back with more content and more of your phone calls. 888-589-8840. 888-589-8840.